Often people, it's not that they don't know how to manifest, they don't know what they want to manifest. They don't know what they want out of life. And I think, we can get on this sort of treadmill and we just do stuff. And there's a little exercise that I think can be really helpful. There's kind of two things. A little exercise really is to write down everything that you do and everything that you are, mother, sister, friend, teacher, whatever. And then all the things that you do. And then beside those, write why you do them and how much you love doing them. You can't show it to anybody ever. But you're straight away presented with the core of the things that really matter to you and that you really love doing. And you can look at the rest and see, well, why am I doing it? Life is too short to be doing. Now, there will be some things that you have to do because the guilt would be too much, there's things that you will have to do that are unpleasant or whatever. But there's so much stuff that we just do because we've always done it. So that can help you come down to the core of what you really want, what gives you pleasure. If people have really lost touch with themselves, and I write about flow a good bit in the book, because from a neuroscience perspective, it's a really exciting concept, really exciting what actually happens in the brain. And I guess that's what people are aiming for, in a sense. When you achieve that state of flow, you are fully present in the moment.
Sabina, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me, Niall.
Okay, so to get started, can you just give us a little bit about your background and your trajectory up until this moment?
Now, how far do you want me to go back?
Just the overview, the synopsis, the key points.
Yeah, yeah. The synopsis is currently, yeah, I'm a psychologist and a neuroscientist, and psychology by degree, neuroscience by PhD, and complete fascination with the human brain and behavior. And I directed a dementia research program for years, several years. My main interest was actually brain health and dementia risk reduction. And I found myself very passionate about it. Actually, when I was doing my PhD, I came across research um, from like 20 years before I was doing my PhD that showed that there were certain risk factors for dementia and that there was ways that you could boost your brain health, although that wasn't the term that was used. It was about cognitive reserve. And that had been around in the scientific literature for years. And I'm kind of going, how come I didn't know that? How come it's not common knowledge? How come it's not out there? And I kind of felt almost compelled that if there's this kind of information around that can tell people that if you make certain lifestyle choices, you can reduce your risk of developing a terrible disease like dementia, there's something wrong here if that's not getting out to the general public. So really, ultimately, that kind of has led to me where, I'm on a mission to get people looking after their brains as routinely as they brush their teeth. And I am really just fascinated with the human brain and behavior, and how our behavior influences our brain and how our brain influences our behavior. And I think it's kind of crazy that most people know very, very little about how their brains work. And I guess that's one of my things, I want to tell you how your brain works. And then if you can understand how your brain works, you understand how you work, which means you have a much better chance of reaching your optimal potential. Now, of course, neuroscience is a relatively new, it's a multidiscipline really, but and there's still tons of stuff we don't know about the brain, but what we do know about the brain, I think, should be shared. And I think from kids should be learning about how their brain works in school. It would just, I just think if you look after your brain health in a way, your mental health and your physical health follows. So, we have a huge amount of talk about mental health and mental health issues, which is great now to be talking about it. I mean, my father had, it was manic depression, it was called then. So, but bipolar. And I mean, we weren't even allowed as kids tell anyone that, my father had that. And it was, it was a shameful thing. So it's great that we talk about these things, but I think that actually, if you just go another layer underneath it and explain to people how their brains work and how they end up in states of stress and anxiety and what's happening when they feel depressed, it would just be so empowering, and it would help prevent actually a lot of the mental health problems we have. Particularly, I mean, a lot of mental health issues begin to develop or begin to manifest in teen years. And so that's something I'm really passionate about. I'm kind of working with an alcohol forum here in Ireland to try and educate people about how the teenage brain works, because it's going through this incredible period of transformation, which makes teens much more vulnerable to addiction, but also makes the brain, is hungry for knowledge and it craves new experiences. But because the frontal lobes aren't fully developed in those years, the individual who's craving the brain that's pushing for experience actually hasn't got the capacity to assess risk properly. And so you have this catastrophic kind of combination. On top of that, they actually when we're teens, we actually experience our emotions on a much deeper, much stronger level. And that can often push kids into alcohol and other substance use to cope with those feelings. And I kind of just think if kids and parents and any adults who interact with teens understood that, we might prevent a lot of problems. And I think that's a biggie. So for me, I'm doing my little bit kind of in various different ways to help people kind of understand how their own brains work.
It's so important, and the metaphor that comes to mind for me here is like it's almost like we've just been given without any previous driving lessons or any theory. We've just been given the keys to a car, and they're like, "Go on ahead, drive," and that's just life. We go through life, and we're always crashed into things. We're always making mistakes. We're always making a total mess. And it's like if we understood how to actually drive the car, how what's going on, we might crash less, and we might have a better drive.
I actually use that metaphor in my second book, Beating Brain Fog, to talk about, you really do need to look under the bonnet and see how things work. And most of us are, yeah, well, you don't get any driving lessons, the equivalent of, but at least driving a car, you get driving lessons. And I don't know how under the bonnet works, and that means if it breaks down, I'm stuck. There's no point to me even lifting the bonnet because I have no idea what it even might be. And I suppose the same applies, if we get stuck, if something's isn't working, or we find ourselves anxious or whatever, to have some sort of understanding, you can help yourself, before it gets to the point where you actually need something like medication or someone else to help you. But as you said, you keep bumping into walls, etc. And I suppose in a way that's a lot of what I'm talking about in the Neuroscience Manifesting, is that we tend to repeat the same behaviors over and over again, and we do a lot of our living unconsciously. And manifesting and the practices associated with it are a way to take control over what you do, and do it in a very focused, directed way. I mean, the book is called The Neuroscience of Manifesting. It could be the neuroscience of success, the neuroscience of achievement, the neuroscience of goal attainment. They're all the same thing. It's just manifesting happens to have sort of a huge following. And I suppose it also has some mystique and mysticism kind of surrounding it that some people find attractive. And I do touch on why we find those things attractive in the book as well.
Definitely, definitely. No, it's a huge subject, manifesting, and whenever people hear that word, there will be certain people that are immediately their defenses will go up and they go, this is woo woo, this is nonsense, whatever. So, what would you say to someone listening to this that is that is skeptical, and why should we take this subject seriously? Do you think?
Um, I think there's nothing wrong with healthy skepticism. I think I kind of say in the book, if I can remember this, um, oh, I can't remember, but it's something I think I was saying, sort of to to believe something without testing it or without scientific evidence is kind of what we say, well, no, hold on, what's the science behind that? But and that's what a lot of people who are skeptical will do, will tell me the science behind that. But what seems to happen with manifesting is people go, no, I don't believe that. And they don't actually take a deep dive to see if there is any science behind it. And I suppose that's what I've done, is I've taken that deep dive. I think the thing with manifesting as well, and you know, to be fair to people who dismiss it, there's lots of reasons to dismiss it, but they tend to be the misconceptions and the misunderstandings that that don't have science behind them. The law of attraction, for example, is kind of one big thing. Now, it's a very nice concept. It's a bit like karma. What you put out there, you get back. But the thing with the law of attraction, when it's used in manifesting, it says that you put your thoughts out there, and that attracts it, what you're thinking about, back into you. Now, there's absolutely no science behind that, and the law of attraction is not a scientific law, and there's no research that I'm aware of that actually looks that. But I suppose what I delve into, and what I explain in great detail, is that it is focused attention rather than attraction that brings those things into our lives, and that's literally how your brain works. There's billions of bits of information your brain is bombarded with every day. And brilliant as it is, it can't filter in all that information. It can't process that information. So it's going to process relevant and important information. And the primary function of your brain is to keep you alive. So the most important things that it's going to filter in are anything that could potentially be detrimental to your health or your survival. So if you're walking along the road, loud bang of a car or whatever. If you're a negative person and you think that bad things always happen to you, your brain is going to keep filtering in all those little negative things that go around all of us all the time. If you have clarity around your goals, which is something that manifesting practices really encourage, clarity and visualizing, really going into detail around your goals. If you have clarity, what that does, what manifesting does, is it activates then the salience network in your brain. So you're giving your brain a very clear message about what is important or relevant to you, to your goal. And so your brain will filter in that information. And the example I think I used in the car was when we were married first, and our old banger of a car went on fire, and we had to dip into the savings for our house to buy a replacement car. So that's something that was very, very important to me. It was back in the day before the internet. And I remember my husband showed me a picture of a Mazda 323 and said, I think we should buy that. And I had no idea what a Mazda 323. I'm not a car person. I'm still not a car person. And once he showed me the photograph, the adverts used to be in the newspaper with a little photograph of the car. The next day when I'm walking to work, all I seem to see in traffic are Mazda 323s. Now, I didn't manifest those by attracting them, into my world. Those Mazda 323s were always in that traffic every day. I never noticed them because my brain wasn't filtering the information in, because it just wasn't relevant to my life. It was going to, it'll filter in things that might be relevant, things that might, be detrimental to your health, or unusual things. So in traffic, say there's like 5 Jeeps with a radio station logo on the side kind of going by, your brain will filter that in and kind of go, oh, that's a bit unusual, so yeah, I mean, it's quite simply that. And so focused attention, I mean, manifesting, the word just means to make things happen. And it really is about gaining clarity around your goals, visualizing those goals, and developing the discipline and focused attention to take action to achieve those goals. And I think that's where the woo kind of comes into it, is people thinking that it's just wishful thinking, that you just, think about it and it will happen. And that's a big misconception about manifesting. But any of the books that you read, people will whatever science or pseudoscience they put underneath it, they are describing active processes. Except with the most recent explosion of it, then you do have a lot of people on TikTok and Instagram who are sort of saying, "Oh, think about this," or "Say this 100 times tonight, and you'll get £1 million tomorrow." I mean, of course, that's bullshit. Like, that's not going to happen. But repeating stuff, having vision boards, they're tools that just keep your brain on focus, that just keep reminding your brain what's important, and it keeps you on track for your goals. Visualization, there's tons of science behind visualization, and our top sports people use it, and we know that if you're visualizing a golf swing, it is a form of practice, because the same areas of your brain are being activated, so you're going to improve your skills in the same way. And I think also visualization serves another purpose, really, because, and most manifesting techniques start with gaining clarity. I kind of say that there's a couple of more foundational steps that you have to address first. But I think when you get to the stage of having clarity about what you want, and then you're supposed to visualize it in every single detail and imagine it, and that sounds to me, actually sort of sounded a bit woo. And then I actually realized, I kind of went, gosh, I do that whenever I'm making a big decision anyway. I don't sit down, I don't have a vision board. But I've just recently refurbished cottages out here, old animal cottages. And sure, I was visualizing what the room would look like and where that would go, and then where does my plumbing have to go. So it makes you actually go through everything in detail, so you can make an action plan. That's exactly what I did with those cottages. We need to get this in place first. I can't put the toilet there because it'll be too far from the drain. You visualize all those things. But I think another purpose of the visualizing is that if you really imagine achieving that goal and what it feels like, you may and what actions you have to take to get there, you may actually realize, oh, this isn't actually for me. Or let's say you want to manifest something like a six-pack, and you visualize yourself with a six-pack, and then you kind of have to work. It's like that. I say the brain is brilliant at solving inverse problems. So that's exactly what it is. I want a six-pack. This is how I want to look. Now, what do I have to do to get that six-pack? Okay, I'm going to have to do these exercises. How many hours a day am I going to have to do these exercises? Am I going to have to change my diet? All those things. So you can start your journey. Or you might actually go, okay, I want a six-pack, but if that means I've got to go to the gym 3 hours a day, whatever, I'm going to have to cut out time with my kids, or time with my husband, or time with my friends. Do I really want that six-pack that much? And so it may actually put you back on another route, or make you kind of connect more with yourself and realize what you actually really, really want. So I think they're very kind of useful tools, visualization, for multiple reasons.
Yeah, some really interesting points there. I suppose the first is what you mentioned, just about the brain being like almost like a filtering mechanism, or a filtering device, and we're only really seeing the information in our environment that is relevant to our goals, also to our survival and all the rest. Um, and then also what you said about, another point there is that, like, so if we don't consciously choose what we want, if we don't have clarity on what we want in life, then I think we're goal directed beings anyway, and we're just going to unconsciously adopt whatever goals are relevant in our social environment. So we're just going to,
Yes.
so it's, to me, this is just becoming conscious of what you actually want, and then making that a focal point of your attention in day-to-day life, and then you're going to see information relevant to that, and
Yeah, yeah, and opportunities. And I think I think what you said there is very, very important. I mean, I used to tutor medical students in Trinity when I worked in Trinity, tutor them in behavioral science, and so many of them, when I talk to them, and why do you want to be a doctor? Oh, well, because I could get the points. We have a point system here, and you need, full points is 600 points. And often people were becoming doctors because they could, or because society said, well, that's the one with the highest points, like the brainiest people do that. Frequently, a lot of them actually wanted to, really would have liked to study music, but they were kind of, that's not a real degree. Go study medicine, and of course, music is a real. I have two sons. One is a doctor, and one was a classical musician. So I had them go in both directions. But yeah, an awful lot of people, and myself included at times, you kind of just go through life. It's like people get a promotion in work, and then suddenly their life is really stressed. And often that promotion, an example, my brother-in-law was an amazing fireman and firefighter, I think is the correct term now. And he was really good, really, really one of the best. And so they promoted him to station manager, which meant he didn't go out on fires very much. And you kind of go, does that even make sense? And suddenly you end up in a job because, because society says, oh, well, you're doing well if you get that promotion. But actually, sometimes it's much smarter to say, no, you know what? I like going out to the fires. I don't like admin so much.
I totally I'm actually writing a book on it about this at the moment. It's all about like society programs us to optimize for like external markers of success, the promotion, the status, the money, and all the rest. In reality, your life is the day to day, and it's like the things to optimize for are alignment with your values, like what you really want, and also your energy. Like, does this actually bring energy to my life? Do I feel more energy after I do this than I do before? Like simple stuff like
Do-
that.
do- does it bring joy to my life? And that's why in the book I have two foundational chapters before you get to the stage of clarity. And well, the first one is called compassion, and it's about self-compassion. And I actually learned a lot myself about that for myself personally when I was writing that chapter, because we're so unkind to ourselves, and we treat ourselves so badly. And to be honest, that voice that we have in ourself, in our head, it's self-referential processing, and it's constantly monitoring what we do and criticizing what we do. And I've said to people, imagine, and it's quite normal for a person to say, oh, you idiot, why did you say that to so and so? You shouldn't have said that. Or, oh my God, I look dreadful, I should lose weight. Or we're always picking on ourselves and nitpicking the slightest thing. Imagine, if that was your friend and their new boyfriend, or girlfriend or whatever, is saying those things to them on a daily basis. Saying, oh, you're awful, you shouldn't have said that. That was a really stupid thing to say. Why are you wearing that? Why did you do this? You'd say to them, get rid of them. They're not good for you. They're just criticizing you all the time. That's no relationship. But yet we do it to ourselves all the time. So it is a form of self-abuse, and it's something I think that we need to learn to be kinder to ourselves, to making a mistake is often categorized in a negative way. Um, and the thing is, there's nothing negative about making a mistake. That's part of the learning process. We learn through errors. You make an error and you go, oh, I need to adjust my behavior, and then go that way. That's how humans learn. That's how animals learn. That's how we train pigeons, to peck at, in psychology, to peck at things, to get, they turn their head slightly towards the lever you want them to peck, and you give them a treat, and then they go close, and that's it. We just learn by mistake. You don't go from 0 to perfect, and perfection anyway is completely underrated, and probably not a great thing to have. So self-compassion plus, the interesting thing I think is when in the book I talk about people just, try to just peel back and find out what it is you really want. As you've just mentioned, you're writing about, to just keep asking why do I want that car? Why do I want that job? What is it I think it will bring to my life? And for most people, if you get them to keep peeling it back, they'll say it's because they want to be happy. They want to be content in their life. And two of the big side effects of self-compassion are happiness and contentment. So if you're just kind to yourself, you'll get what you're looking for. It's kind of funny. An awful lot of us in front of our face. And then the second chapter really is about connecting with yourself, your real self, and about explaining to people that that sense of self, that and this was quite a challenging chapter to write, because it's quite complex science, and it's mixed in really with philosophy in ways as well. But this notion of ourself, that we have some sort of unchanging self, the eye behind the eyes, our eyes, and it's kind of probably hard for people to get their heads around, but that sense of self is, it's just a story made up by our brain, taken from, data, random data, data from our childhood, data that's outdated, data that's not true anymore, data that may never have been true. So I think it's really important to interrogate the story of you that you've been carrying around with you, and examine those probably many limiting beliefs that are stopping you from attaining your goals, that somewhere along the line you figured, oh, I'm no good at this, or I'll never be successful at that. And if you actually, examine it, you'll probably find that it was just something someone said, maybe when you were 7, like, seriously. And the thing is, you are the author of your own life. You can change that story. And I suppose as well, that's the thing about manifesting, where a lot of people think of it as woo, is that it's about changing your reality. But we can change our reality. Um, because what's real for us is so influenced and shaped by perception, how we perceive a situation. It's shaped by societal influence. You can have 3 people watching one scene, and they'll all see something different, because it's influenced by their experience, and their perceptions, and their brain's best guess. So uh, I'm not getting into the big question of like, what is reality, but for sure we can shape our reality, we can shape our future. And that's where optimists sort of differ from, pessimists. And an optimist can sustain a setback and see it just as that, or as a learning point, and use it to shape, where they go next. And a pessimist will see it as failure and maybe stop going. And um optimists actually believe that more good things will happen to them, and more good things do happen to them. And it's really, again, probably down to that focus of attention. They're focusing on the good things, and ignoring the bad things. And I mean, it's not about being realistic. It's about understanding that how you interpret things shapes the experience that you have of those things and that reality.
Definitely, definitely. There's so much in there that I could try and unpack. But one of the things that really stood out for me in the book, and it's relevant to what you were just talking about there, was the analogy you used of describing memory. So by default, we think of it like a recording device, and you say it's actually more like a Wikipedia page. And I thought that's a really interesting way to think about it. Do you maybe expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think the Wikipedia idea came from another researcher, so I'll put my hands up on that. But what I did was I sort of extended the analogy a little bit further. But yeah, I mean, a Wikipedia page, yeah, is written by many people, and it can be changed and updated. And the same applies to our memories. I think in the book I talk about, 4 friends going to a wedding, and they all remember little bits differently. And then if they talk about, this is where the updating comes in. If I talk to you about the wedding, then some of your memories are going to become my memories, because you'll tell me something happened. And memories they're not, as you just said, they're not sort of stored, and each time you kind of pull them out and talk about them, and they get adjusted a little bit. And I mean, that, like, and you'll see it. You'll have friends who'll exaggerate, and we even exaggerate ourselves on occasion. And there comes a point where there's this, what's real, what's actually not real. You begin to kind of believe the reiterated memory. And the Wikipedia analogy, I suppose, is that with Wikipedia, you've got fact checkers, and you've got citations, and you've got people checking up on those. And we don't have those. We don't really have those, and we tend to believe, we have this misconception that memory is how would you put it, very trustworthy. And it's not really. It's influenced by, multiple things. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. There's so many different types of memory as well. I mean, there could be entire books on, and there is entire books just on memory. Um,
Well, to me, if there's a memory from the past that might be a sticking point for you or that is potentially difficult, I'm not talking about severe traumas here, just things that cause a bit of discomfort. It's just like it's just worth maybe asking yourself the question, like, what's the most helpful interpretation of that situation going forward within reason? You're not making up stuff, but just like, what's the most helpful way I can look at that to help move me forward in life? It's
yeah.
really simple, but really
And I do
effective.
think that's where the compassion comes in, because I think part of that beating yourself up, and I've done it, did it for years, still do sometimes. And then sometimes I go, no, hold on a second. You're human. We all make mistakes, and we do all make mistakes. And a lot of us carry with us very deep regrets or guilt, over things. And yeah, I think it's even going back and imagining that it was someone else did what you did, or whatever it is, that, as you said, we're not talking about major trauma, we're talking about that kind of thing where maybe you feel you performed less than you should have, or you did something that was harmful or hurtful to somebody else, and it's one of those things that kind of sticks with you. If you imagine your best friend um, in that same situation, how would you view it, and what would you say to him or her? And I think that's a really good way to do it, because you start to realize, well, gosh, I'd be compassionate. Sure, she didn't really mean it, and not going to do it again. And if we could talk to ourselves more that way, we could move on instead of staying stuck. And it is a form of stress, and a kind of a chronic stress. If there's an unresolved issue, we tend to talk about stress as fighting or fleeing, but in the longer term, another stress response is freezing. And I think sometimes when we get stuck on something and can't move forward, I think that's a form of freezing, and it really can stop us progressing, just keeps us stuck in the same place, and that's not useful. I think guilt is an interesting thing. I'm actually writing another book at the moment for people who are caring for a loved one with dementia. So I'm kind of exploring the sense of guilt that you can feel in and around those, either not doing enough, or guilty thoughts about, God, I wish I didn't have to do this, and guilt is kind of a really uh, interesting emotion. I never like to talk about positive and negative emotions. I just believe we have emotions, and they have evolved because they serve some sort of purpose. And usually, when they become problematic, it's possibly because we've suppressed them. If you take anger, for instance, anger is not a bad emotion, per se. Anger can help us achieve many things. It can right wrongs. It can save us, from harm. But often where anger kind of gets us into trouble is we suppress it in a moment, and suppress it and suppress it and suppress it, and then we explode, when it's gone beyond, whereas if we just responded to the smaller feelings of anger more rationally and said, what can I do? Am I justified in this anger? Maybe if I talk to the person about what's happening, and you can actually do something. But often what happens is we get to explosion point, and we express our anger actually at someone else, for something else. So the anger isn't what's wrong. It's us kind of ignoring the original early feelings of anger. And kind of was interested exploring that sense of guilt as well, because I think a lot of us, guilt and shame are really hard emotions to kind of cope with. And I think they're emotions that can really hold us back. Um, and interesting. I've been reading kind of around the literature about, and theories around guilt, and again, it seems to be that it's uh it serves a survival purpose, in that we're social creatures, and we have to be part of a social group. And so feelings of guilt, i.e., you may have harmed someone, may spur you, as most emotions do. They spur you to take action in some way. If you're most feelings, not even just emotions, if you're hungry, it spurs you to eat because you need to eat to survive. And if you feel guilty, it spurs you to apologize or make recompense or not do it again. And so that supports a cohesive society. And that makes sense. But then again, say if you're in a context like that where you're caring for someone and you feel guilty because you can't spend enough time with them, or you feel guilty about the thoughts you have where you're, I wish I wasn't doing this. That's not going to serve that purpose, but it's still there because we live in a different way now. So it's about kind of, I suppose, identifying that and saying, well, what can I achieve with this guilt? Can I change the amount of hours I'm doing caring for someone? No, I can't, because I've got to care. I've other responsibilities. So there's no point in feeling the guilt. Yeah, and I kind of think if we kind of understand as best we can sort of why we have certain feelings, it can help us manage them if they're kind of going out of proportion in a different context.
Yeah, it's a very important point, and it reminds me of. I take it you're familiar with Lisa Feldman Barrett, her work on emotions.
I'm terrible with names. Yes, probably.
Yeah, her whole theory is that like there is actually no such thing as a category of emotion. So we just think there's anger, sadness, and all the rest. And what she's arguing, and she's got good research to back it up, is that these are just like literally physical stimuli,
Variations.
physical stimuli in the body, and then our brain then assigns meaning to what those stimuli are, and then that's where we get I feel angry, I feel sad, and all the rest. And it's like if you can just become aware of that, you can actually change what a physical sensation means to you, and then maybe not be stuck in an emotional state, which I
I
think is
am
really
familiar. Yeah,
empowering.
I am really familiar with that. Yeah, 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 yeah. Exactly that. It's and that's what I'm talking about, changing your reality as well. It's just your brain interpreting uh signals from your body, and that's what happens. So you either have your brain is getting signals from your environment, the world around you, but also from inside your body. And it is making predictions as to what those signals mean. And a lot of that is shaped by your brain's past experience. And so it completely colors your reality. It colors how you interact with the world. And that's why I think that kind of exercise of going back and trying to understand yourself and your behaviors and why you kind of do certain things, you can then start to retrain your brain. I mean, your brain is, that's why, one of the things when it comes to brain health, one of the best ways that you can keep your brain healthy is to keep doing new things, and challenging yourself, and pushing yourself a little beyond your comfort zone, because that harnesses neuroplasticity, which really is just a fancy word to explain that the brain changes with learning. And if you consider your brain as a prediction machine, it's constantly trying to predict what's going to happen next, and it does that, mainly from past experience, and then sort of tempered by incoming signals. Um, in order to better predict, your brain needs loads of, the more data it has, the better predictions it can make. And so you doing new things and pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone gives your brain more data. And it also makes you more resilient, because you're rising to new challenges the whole time and your brain is learning. But then you have this paradox that because your brain, uh, because its primary purpose is to keep you alive, it likes the status quo, and it doesn't like new things because there may be risk attached. So we do, and we all feel that tension between, I want to do this new thing, and oh no, I'm kind of just comfortable where I am, But yeah, we kind of do need that new stuff to make. And I guess that's what that is. That's how you can change, those old patterns, is by having new experiences, doing things, and trying to perceive them in a different way, and so doing, you're retraining your brain, you're changing your interaction with the world, you're changing your reality, how it appears, and you can kind of really, I think it can be utterly transformative.
Wow. So you could almost argue then that manifesting is like conscious and applied neuroplasticity. Is that fair to say? Or
Yeah, I think, and I do talk about this. Yes, manifesting works because it harnesses neuroplasticity. And brilliant as neuroplasticity is, it is not as amazing as some of the things that you would read. The benefits of neuroplasticity aren't going to happen overnight. It requires action and work. And I think that's the thing. Yes, you can harness neuroplasticity, you can learn things, but you've got to do those things in order to achieve that. But definitely, I think um, manifesting in a way also acts as a support for your frontal lobes. Uh, Paying attention, focused attention is a very, very um, high energy, effortful um, behavior, function. Our attention naturally strays. And so to stay focused, you have to work very hard, and it uses a lot of energy. And often we forget, we might decide, wake up in the morning, oh, today I'm going to do X, Y, Z, or I'm going to go for a run or whatever. And we can forget because we get caught up with doing other things. So I think manifesting acts as a support to keep you focused by having things like affirmations, repeating things in the morning, or having your vision board that shows what you want to achieve. It just these reminders that just kind of keep you on track and focused, because it is easy. We forget what we intended to do as we're busy kind of unconsciously working our way through the day. And many times you just say you're giving up sweets, and then someone offers you a sweet and you eat it. And then you kind of go, oh shit, I was saying, oh, I wasn't going to eat crap food this week.
definitely, definitely. So with the neuroplasticity piece, one of the things you say in the book is that the most central element of manifesting anything is change. And the thing about change is it's difficult. People find it really hard to change. So for someone that would like to maybe make a change in their life, have you any suggestions about how they can maybe think about this in a way that's going to be more helpful going forward as they start on this? Anything come to mind there?
Yeah, I mean, changes, that's what I'm talking about, doing new things, change. It's very positive. It's brilliant for your brain. I think break things down, into smaller actions. Um, dip a toe in the water, a little bit at a time. I think because what's what's wonderful about having sort of like, say, a to-do list or an action list is that when you achieve one of those, you get a dopamine hit. Your pleasure center is activated, and dopamine is released to motivate you to engage in that pleasurable activity again. So I think, if you want to bring about change, I think one thing to do is to break that change down into small steps. And then when you achieve a small step, you'll get that reward. You'll be more motivated to go to the next step, rather than saying, oh, when I do this, it'll be brilliant. You kind of go, oh, well, look, I did this. That's one little step closer to that one. I think there was something else that came into my mind there when I was talking about bringing. Oh, yeah, it's acting as if, and that's a real manifesting. That's a real little manifesting tool. And I would, prior to kind of writing about manifesting and delving into it deeply, I mean, I would refer to that in terms of smiling. I would call it fake it till you make it. And the science is there. Like, smiling is it's got so many health benefits. It lowers your blood pressure, it boosts your immune function, it releases serotonin, makes you feel good about yourself. And the thing is that even if you don't feel like smiling. And people often think that smiling is a reactive thing, well, I've nothing to smile about, so I'm not going to smile. But the thing is that even if you fake a smile, and they tested this by just getting people to bite on a pencil, if you fake a smile, you get all those health benefits. So, you have that. That's a little tool that you have. Just faking it, faking a smile can actually make you feel happier. And if you want to be, it sounds so funny, but act as if you want to be an early riser, set your alarm for early in the morning and act as if you're an early riser. And that means, act as if, oh, I get up at 6 in the morning, and you get up. And if you kind of keep doing that, then you will become that thing. And it really is just about just taking action to do those changes. But everybody has their own, comfort zone, their own pace. And I do write about this in the book, because that's another sort of little negative that I felt about manifesting, is that there's this sense that if you don't manifest your dreams, if things don't work out for you, you're doing it wrong, or there's something wrong with you. And I think it's really important to point out that none of us start any journey, manifesting journey, from the same point. Do you know? You've got genetics at play. You've got your environment, your life experiences. You can't. The only person that excuse me, when assessing progress, the only person that you can compare yourself to is yourself 1 minute ago, 5 minutes ago, 5 weeks ago. It's irrelevant to compare yourself to anyone else. You're making progress. It's only yourself that you're comparing to. And I use an analogy, an example in the book, actually, about a couple who want to adopt a healthier lifestyle. They want to start sleeping better, eating better, exercising more. And they both start on the same, they live together, they both start on the same day, same page, doing all. And he is achieving much, she's struggling. And she's struggling to kind of get up to exercise, and she's struggling to kind of keep to the healthy foods, and he's doing grand. And you might look at it on the surface and go, well, he's succeeding, she's just failing. But if you look a little bit closer, she has a family history of insomnia, and so she's not sleeping very well at night. She's genetically predisposed to have insomnia. She's female, which means she's more likely to have insomnia. And until such time as she sorts out her sleep, it's going to be really difficult for her to diet and exercise, for a couple of reasons. When you have disrupted sleep, you eat more calories than when you have solid sleep, and you crave those calories from sugar and fat. Also, when you're not getting enough sleep, it's very hard to have the energy to exercise. And yet, exercise will actually help boost your sleep. But essentially, really, she is not starting, it's not a level playing field. So each person has to decide, what will work. So really, what would probably work for her is to just focus on how she can improve her sleep, and perhaps even go for something like CBTI, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, especially for insomnia, or literally just focus on prioritizing her sleep. And from that, then the other things will follow. But there was just kind of an example, and we've so many factors influence us. And again, that comes down to the compassion. Just compare yourself with yourself, you know, not with other people. And it's very hard. It's very hard in this society. To be honest, I wouldn't be on social media anymore, I think, except it's sort of expected uh, for my work. And because I find I scroll, and it just makes me feel so depressed. All these perfect people and perfect bodies and high achievers. And I kind of go, oh God. Hard. It's kind of a hard world for people now. I mean, it's always hard for everybody, but the social media has just changed everything dramatically.
100%. And just I think what you're saying there about not everybody starting in the same place is a really important point. And also what you're saying about, just act as if, sort of fake it till you make it. Like, reminds me of that quote. It's like, you're far more likely to act your way into a new way of thinking than you are to think your way into a new way of acting. And I think that's
That's
just,
a good phrase.
it
Yeah.
accelerates the process.
Yeah, I would say Madonna strike a pose, like if you act confident, even just that's why posture and things are so important. If you stand confidently, you look confident and you forget as well. And here's another thing where smiling is. And when I'm thinking about Madonna strike a pose and all those pouty looks when we were teens, it was kind of, that kind of, to have an unapproachable face, and then you wondered why no boys ever asked you up to dance. It's because you look terrifying. Um, no, but as human beings, we are more likely to approach someone who is smiling than we are to approach someone who's not smiling. So, you kind of win all around with the smiling. But yeah, the way we interact with other people, our bodies, the way we hold ourselves, we know that, like, if you're closed off or so, like, just change. And again, it's the same sort of thing that you were talking about, where it's internal signals, your body posture. If you hold your body in a confident way, your brain will start to act more confidently. Same as if you hold yourself really tensely and your neck, and it affects everything that you do. Frowning. There's so much that we do that is so intertwined, and I think people don't realize that we have more control than we think we have.
Big time, big time. And the body thing, there's a woman, Pat Ogden, who interviewed. She says every body tells a story, and like, we're all telling a story with our bodies. It's like, what story am I telling with mine? But before we wrap up, Sabina, just a question here. I think people will be very curious to get your thoughts on this. Um, for someone sitting at home that hasn't really, they're not really doing anything yet, but they'd like to start. Have you got any sort of tips or anything, any guidance for them on how they can really utilize manifestation in their life? Like, what would you recommend they do? Like, would it be things like visualization? Would it be affirmations, vision board? Like, what would you say are the most important and
Think
effective things they need to do?
I think it's something that I think I talk about in the book, and I think it's really the most important thing you could do is to make an appointment with yourself. Take time out. Um, that thing that I was talking about earlier, examine the story of you. But there's also another thing. Often people, it's not that they don't know how to manifest, they don't know what they want to manifest. They don't know what they want out of life. And I think, we can get on this sort of treadmill and we just do stuff. And there's a little exercise that I think can be really helpful. There's kind of two things. A little exercise really is to write down everything that you do and every everything that you are, mother, sister, friend, teacher, whatever. And then all the things that you do. And then beside those, write why you do them and how much you love doing them. You can't show it to anybody ever. But you're straight away presented with the core of the things that really matter to you and that you really love doing. And you can look at the rest and see, well, why am I doing it? Life is too short to be doing. Now there will be some things that you have to do because the guilt would be too much, and there's things that you will have to do that are unpleasant or whatever, but there's so much stuff that we just do because we've always done it. So that can help you come down to the core of what you really want, what gives you pleasure. If people have really lost touch with themselves, and I write about flow a good bit in the book, because from a neuroscience perspective, it's a really exciting concept. Really exciting what actually happens in the brain. And I guess that's what people are aiming for, in a sense. When you achieve that state of flow, you are fully present in the moment, loving what you're doing while you're doing it. And I think most of us have something where that happens us. For an artist, might be while they're painting. I was talking to someone recently who has tinnitus, and again, it's talking about perceptions of pain, and I said to him, is there any time you don't notice the tinnitus? And he said, yeah, when I'm in my workshop doing my wood turning. And I said that, well, that's obviously his flow, because he's putting no attention on the pain. Pain requires attention to be perceived, and it requires cognition to perceive it as attention. But we all sort of have something where we can get in that flow. I have chronic daily migraine. If I'm doing something that I absolutely love, it's not that the migraine has particularly gone away, but I'm not noticing it. It's not becoming, the overarching thing in my day. Now, of course, I have some days where I have migraines where I can't do anything, but I think we can, if you can find that, through whether it's those little exercises or thinking about your childhood, what thing was it that you used to do where your mother would call you and you wouldn't hear them? You'd miss lunch. Do you know what I mean? Because you were so caught up in what you're doing. And that kind of can often give you a hint as to finding I call it finding your joy, just that thing that you love doing. And I kind of discovered, I think I was writing one of my books, and I discovered the concept of ikigai. And I'd realized that's what I'd been doing all my life. I just didn't know that there was a Japanese concept. And it's really, it's a Venn diagram, isn't it? You're nodding, you're familiar with it, but it's the concept of the idea of finding something that you love doing. Um, what is it? Finding something that you love doing, something that you're good at. Yeah, it has to be something you love doing, that you're good at, that the world needs. Um, and then you can find a way to get paid for doing it. And I know that when I was bringing up my kids, that's kind of what I was trying to teach them to do, but I didn't know it was called ikigai. But I think it's a pretty good principle behind a happy life, is doing something you love. And I think you get additional benefits if it's something that other people need or want or benefit from. And obviously that's how our economy works. If you have something or produce something that someone else wants, they'll pay you so that you can survive in this world.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I think, what you're getting at there is really good advice. I was listening to a talk yesterday actually, and the guy was saying like this idea that you should follow your passion or find your passion is quite unapproachable, like, 'cause it sort of assumes that there's just one big overarching thing that is your passion, and what you're sort of getting at here is that it's probably better to sort of follow your flow or follow your energy, like, all those different wee moments where you lose your sense of self in an activity, or if you have tinnitus and you find you're not thinking about the tinnitus whenever you're doing the woodwork or whatever, like,
Yeah.
these are little clues as to directions that you should maybe be expanding in your life, so I think it's such.
And I think, and I think you're right. Like, I have things that I'm passionate about, although I wouldn't identify it. But people will often say to me, "Oh, you speak so passionately about your thing," but I'm just interested in it, and so I'm just talking about it. And if it comes across that way, that's kind of interesting. I think the key is as well. I think and it relates to what you're just saying about your, find your passion. Um, I think it's really important to remember that this is a journey. Like, manifesting your goal, that's just that goal. Once you've manifested that, you got to go looking for another one, because the joy in life comes from the journey. Yeah, you get a buzz when you get there, but that wears off. Ask anyone who's, won the lotto or, scored that goal and such. Nobody will ever take that away from you, but the buzz isn't going to stay forever. And it's not enough. The joy is in the journey, planning, working towards it, the sense of achievement, the neurochemicals that happen and are delivered through that whole process. And yeah, I did that, I got that, I enjoy that, I can rest for a while or whatever. But really often it's said, right, what next? And that's, to me, what makes for a good life. That's why Another area that I'm very passionate about is the fact that we live in a very ageist society. And it's like, older people, almost, yeah, you should be just kind of, you're almost put out to pasture, until you die. And I kind of see it as, no, this is a time now where you not bringing up kids, you may have your mortgage paid off. Now start looking back even at those dreams that you couldn't follow because you were too busy. Now is the time to see, could you write a novel? Now is the time to see, actually, would you be any good at painting or water skiing or whatever it is you never did that you'd love to have tried. And I think that's really important. I just think in Western society, we're just so ageist. It's, yeah, it's unreal. And yeah, I'm very passionate again about, there's that word passionate, but about kind of encouraging people to see uh, that whatever phase of life you want to call it, that later phase as a phase for opportunity to even get more out of life.
For sure, for sure. Okay, Sabina, it's been such a pleasure. I've enjoyed every minute of this. Where
Well,
can
thanks
people
very much.
find you online? Where can they get the book after this conversation?
You should be able to get the book in all good bookstores. It's definitely on Amazon and all those online, and it's available in print, ebook, and audiobook. Yeah, really just should be wherever you buy books. And if it's not, ask them to order it in for you.
Good thinking. Okay, Sabina, thanks so much. Have a great week ahead, and we'll talk
Thank
soon.
you.